Good evening, guys. Welcome to Wednesday. So, many of you read yesterday's post about how codependency and trauma are linked. They're actually connected. Specifically, trauma is a result of, or codependency is a result of trauma. I got a little lost there. And so tonight, I want to talk to you about the 4 steps that actually translate to real healing in codependency and trauma, because you need all 4 of them in order to capture your life back, to take back your love, your confidence, your happiness, your sense of self. And so let's review a bit about what trauma is and what it needs, because if you've been following me, you've noticed that I've been doing these trainings on what trauma is and in connection with the Get Closure Now course that I'm promoting. So trauma is the result of what didn't happen after an intense event. It is a response to not being able to discharge a lot of emotional energy and get reconnected back with our baseline of safety, openness, creativity, and play. Basically, we get back to rest. What happens with codependency and trauma is we go into what's called a Fawn Response. So the brain has 4 options when it responds to a danger. It can kill it. That's the fight response. It can run from it. That's where your flight or flee response run from. Hi, Sonia. And then it can freeze. That's where it plays dead. And then it can fawn. And this is where it negotiates with the threat and tries to convince it to keep it alive by making itself attractive, appealing, or valuable to the threat. This is where codependency comes from. So if we're going to look at codependency from this angle, then we can understand how to appropriately approach our codependent behaviors, our pain, our emptiness, our loss of self, and begin to restore ourselves back to our wholeness. Okay? Now, the reason I bring this up is because most of the time people think codependency is a disease, an addiction, an identity, a flaw in who they are, the way real love works, that kind of thing. And that's utter bullcrap. Okay? Hi, Catherine. Nice to see you. And so when we take it from this angle, we're able to actually discover how to heal codependency and the underlying trauma of fawning and being abandoned in that. Because the big fear we all have if we're dealing with codependency, the big fear is that we'll be discarded, we'll be excluded, we'll be rejected, and then we'll no longer be included, valued, loved, protected, nurtured. And a lot of times, for most of us, this is our parent doing this. This is the person who has the power to protect us. This is the person who holds all the keys and cards in our lives to take care of us. They're the ones that are threatening the discard. They're the ones threatening to not love us if we're not enough, if we don't please them, if we're too much, if we irritate them, if we don't regulate their emotions appropriately. This is where the trauma comes in with codependency. And using the next 4 steps I'm going to give you, we can eliminate that trauma, and then through that process you become restored to yourself. You become whole again. Now, I got to understand that this kind of impact of the discard actually impacts us in 3 specific ways. 1, it impacts our identity. Our identity becomes void. We discard ourselves. We're like, hey, I need to be whatever you want me to be, so you'll keep me, so I will then mimic what you want me to be. I'll please you. I'll fix you. I'll regulate you. I'll shift and change myself. I'll become a chameleon in order to make myself appealing to you. So this is where our people-pleasing habits come in. This is where fixing comes in. This is where invisibility shows up. I don't exist unless you need me to exist. I don't have wants or needs because those are going to disrupt you. No, instead, your wants and needs become my wants and needs. Your likes and dislikes become my own. This is where we basically discard our identity. So that's impact number 1. Impact number 2 is it distorts connection. Rather than connection being a safe, expansive place where we understand ourselves and other people, where it's consensual and fun and playful, it becomes torturous, becomes painful, becomes dreadful. And so we exchange connection for control. We control their feelings. We regulate their experience. We try to prevent consequences happening to them. This is the enabling aspect of codependency. We caretake their needs because this is how we feel close to them. This is how we get that sense of connection we so desperately need. And we do desperately need it. It's a valid need, guys. It's not a shame to say we desperately need it. We desperately do. We're starving for it. And the underlying neglect going on is the neglect of love. We're not being loved. We're not being seen. We're not being celebrated. Instead, we're being drained and used. Right? So this distorts connection into control. And it does something very, very, it's very important to understand what it does to our needs and wants. We discard our needs and wants, so we become avoidant to our own feelings. We become numb to ourselves at a deeper level. And we start to see that, we start to assume that we're a burden, that we don't matter, that we should get rid of these things. We should tolerate emptiness. We should tolerate the loneliness. We should tolerate their shitty behavior. We should conform to whatever they decide, right? That's what we're doing there with that distortion of connection. Then the third impact that the threat of discard and fawning creates for us comes in with happiness. We lose our happiness because we've lost contact with real connection and we've lost contact with ourself. So we can't generate happiness in our life because we don't know what happiness is. I mean, we're out there going like, well, if they're happy, then I'm happy. Oh, they're sad, then I'm sad. We auto-regulate our feelings down to theirs because, we got to please them. We got to be what they think or what we think they want so that they'll desire us, right? All in an effort to avoid the discard. That's the big trauma we're trying to control. Yet we're still being discarded. I call them micro discards. You're not enough. You're too much. You're so selfish. Why can't you just be like everybody else? Why do you bother me with these things? These are micro discards. They are very, very painful. And they excite that intense fear about the big final discard. Okay? Now, something really powerful is going on here for us chemically. We need to understand this. It's called trauma bonding. So what happens is we're in love with our parent or we're in love with a significant other. So we have oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin running. These are binding chemicals. This is how we bond with someone. Our brain is triggered into these experiences or with this person and the brain goes, give us these chemicals and we see this person. Right? That's where the love feeling comes in. But it's also bonded with fear, with adrenaline, with epinephrine, with cortisol. So we literally have a dread-love response to these people. And this is where we get trauma bonded. This is where we fawn and love the abuser or the neglector. This is where we make up excuses for them. They didn't really mean that. They're just having a bad day. It's okay. I'll work it out. We become their enabler and their defender. And this is also why when we exit these kinds of systems, we kind of go crazy because we are losing our only sense of real bond with someone. So we lose our sense of identity. We lose our sense of connection. We lose our sense of happiness. So it can be very devastating to us. So we need to understand these three impacts before we can adequately and effectively heal from codependency. And this is where the 4-step process comes in that I use both in the Get Closure Now process that I teach for healing trauma specifically, and then the Codependency Confidence system. Okay? So they're broken down into 2 systems. So let's go through it. Step 1. Step 1 is where we restore true identity. And we do that through a process called the HEAL process. It's a 3-step process that allows us to shed the internalized emptiness, shame, fear, grief, or fatigue that we've been living with and begin to incorporate love. What it's doing is it's actually training our brain to respond to us with a feeling of love rather than a feeling of shame. And this helps us to start connecting back to our internal voice. We start to hear ourselves again because with shame not being in the way, we can actually go, I matter. And since I matter, I can hear me again. I'm going to start paying attention to my wants and needs. I'm going to start showing up for me. I'm going to start being a part of my life. because we like and love and enjoy and adore ourselves. So that's step one. We've got to restore our true identity, and we do that through the heal process. Step two is we need to reconnect. We need to create a healthy connection again, both with ourselves and with others. And this process I call the connection practice. So most of the time with the discard threat, we've also emotionally isolated. And so we have created what's called pathological loneliness or internalized loneliness, where we feel emotionally isolated both from ourselves and everyone else. So we're an orphan emotionally. We have no emotional shelter. So the connection process takes this into account, and we start to reconnect with ourselves, with our beingness. Now that we've got the shame out of the way because of the heal process, and we have love being cultivated there, it becomes safer to reconnect to ourselves. And as we do that, we work out this internalized loneliness, and we also start to heal the trauma bond, because now we separate love from dread and fear, and we start to see that love is safe, but love with pain isn't love at all. So we actually begin to understand what abuse is versus being loved is. And we cultivate this with this connection practice, which is an emergence, or it's an immersion back into feeling what we feel and bringing comfort, compassion, joy, and play into that. Typically in this step two is where we also do trauma clearing using the closure technique, because there's a lot of bonding trauma there. A lot of attachment trauma, a lot of abandonment can come up in that. And so we typically incorporate step 4 with step 2 in this process. Further, with step 2 in the connection practice, we learn how to actually connect with another human being, because we can't do it as an island. That's one thing codependency loves to program into us. We're islands. We don't need other people. I should be able to do this on my own. Bullshit. What we need to do is begin to reconnect with safe, loving people. And then at that point, we witness by experience that love is actually safe, that who we are is worth knowing, loving, and keeping, and that in reality, we were always whole. We're okay. So we can be seen, we can be known, we can be loved, we can be kept, again, in connection. And once that's being achieved, then we can move to step 3, and this is where we take control of our happiness. This is where we experience for ourselves the reality that we have the power to create our joy, reconnect with it, using proven skills. So I have this thing called the 10 laws that I teach in step 3, and these 10 laws allow us to reconnect with our power, with our creativity, with our knowingness or intuition, and then to really take off with creating a life deliberately that brings us joy, brings us happiness. Then that leads us to step 4, which is actually getting closure to trauma. So step 4 is not always necessary, but 9 times out of 10 it is. And this is where we use the closure technique in its 6-step process to actually achieve definitive permanent closure to any kind of trauma you're dealing with. Guys, this is it. I have tested this for over a decade. It is these 4 steps that resolve our need for codependency, resolve the trauma, and then restore our happiness, our confidence, and our love, so that we can have the relationships we want. We can have the jobs we want. We can take the risks in business and jobs that we dream of. We can go out and have the vacations we want. We can be loved. We can have the friendships. We can do the things that really matter to us, because we have the foundation of being lovable, wantable, and desirable, both to ourselves and others. We have the foundation of confidence that our value matters, and we have the understanding of what brings us joy. Okay? So if you want to take this leap, and I invite you to apply for your seat in the upcoming training, the 6-week training I have called Get Closure Now. It starts June 3rd. We're going to go through how trauma works, how to regulate your nervous system so you can get control of your calm yourself down, and in pattern new peace, new awareness, new creativity, how the actual trauma technique works, and then I'm going to teach you how to recode your life post that. And then, because if you sign up in the next 3 weeks, Codependence to Confidence is included in this. okay? That's where you get the other 3 steps. So you get the heal process, you get the connection practice, and you get the thrive strategy. You literally have the entire setup you need to change your life. Now, included in this is one one-on-one session with me where we go through the closure technique together to get closure on a specific trauma of your choosing. This is, if you're looking for your confidence again, if you're looking for love again, you're looking for your happiness, you're looking for relief from the crazy making, from the shame, from the trauma, this is for you. This was built specifically for you. So I will be posting a link for you in the comments here. Go down there, apply for your spot on it. Right now we have 14 seats left. I have 5 people that have applied to it. I've got to go through the interviews, make sure that it's appropriate for them, because again, this may not be appropriate for you now, but we need to find out. And if it isn't, I'll connect you with the appropriate resources for you, because that's what I'm here for. I want you to succeed. And if my systems won't make that happen, I will connect you with the systems that will. Generally, though, most people are a really, really good fit for this. So take the risk. If money's a concern, don't let it be, because I have this thing called income-aware pricing. So your cost is determined by the amount you make. Okay, so it's very sensitive. That way, very aware. And like Sonia says, she's done this process. She's been through this, and she says it works so powerfully. You can ask her. She's made a comment. And see for yourself what another person has experienced with the closure technique, with the technologies, and the processes that are in Codependency Confidence, with the heal process, with the connection practice, and with thrive strategy. So it's not just me tooting my horn. It's actually real people have experienced this. I've been at this for 11 years. I've worked with over 400 people successfully in this, and I can guarantee that you'll get results with it if you do the work. Okay? So I appreciate you guys being here again. Tomorrow we're going to have our live Q&A. So you got questions, post them. I appreciate you guys being here, and remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping. And I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Have a good night, guys. Bye-bye.